Back here on the show on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast to talk more about the draft, specifically with the San Francisco 49ers, Brandon Aiyuk, Deebo Samuel now being involved in these trade talks around the 49ers, and them situating their wide receiver position has been a growing topic around the NFL. I don't have to mention too much of the Brandon Aiyuk, trade talks around him, not being satisfied with the contract extension that they're trying to negotiate. But John Lynch has evidently has said that one thing that he wants to do is try and sign Brandon Aiyuk, and he's a lot more positive about it. But Brandon Aiyuk and his agent are saying or denying rumors, not really giving updates on anything that's going on. And with the draft finalizing this past weekend, there was a good amount of traction that was gained around these rumors after the first round, really, because the 49ers selected Florida wide receiver Ricky Pearsall with the 31st overall pick. And immediately, the first thing people think of is, oh, like this has to be insurance for Brandon Aiyuk to seek a trade elsewhere. They might have finally given in to Brandon Aiyuk and releasing him. Well, not releasing him, but releasing him in terms of letting him explore trades and just giving up on the fact that they could extend him. That's right away what people thought. But something that just blindsided me really was that these Deebo Samuel trade rumors started to pick up. And, you think of Deebo, you think of Brock Purdy, Fred Warner. These are the guys that I thought the 49ers, don't even look at those guys because we're not trading those. I thought they were at that level with Deebo and everything that he could do. I don't have to go in and explain how much he brings to their offense. It's well known around the NFL what he brings. But a lot of these rumors started really picking up really from last Tuesday before the NFL draft when the San Francisco Chronicle's Mike Silver reported that Deebo was assured by the 49ers that he wouldn't be traded during or after the NFL draft. And then everything just sort of changed in a whirlwind. And on Thursday, during the first round of the NFL draft, the Athletics' Diana Russini reported that San Francisco actually explored and inquired a little bit about moving Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel both for something in the first round to have them move up in the first round. Allegedly, that was the report from Diana Russini. She also tweeted out that same day that she said, I spoke with Deebo Samuel on the phone and asked his reaction to the 49ers drafting of his potential replacement and to the reports that they explored trading him. Deebo Samuel said, I know what's going on, he said, but it is what it is. I'm good with them. I'm chilling. That's what Deebo said. That's what Diana Russini's tweet read on Thursday after the 49ers selection and everything like that. Deebo then seemed to dispel or just go completely against what Diana Russini tweeted that day on his Instagram story, sort of poking fun of it, alleging to the fact that it might not be true at all, laughing at it a little bit. But that was all right away on Thursday and into Friday, heading into the second round. Then again, the San Francisco Chronicle claimed that the Pittsburgh Steelers had an offer for Deebo Samuel from the 49ers on top of it all. But in the end, the Steelers refused to accept this trade proposal from the 49ers because the asking price from them was too high for them. And if you followed, the Steelers are not shy about letting everybody know that they are interested in bringing in another receiver. They drafted Roman Wilson, but even still, it's still reported that they are on the lookout for some. They've mentioned Cortland Sutton. They've been linked to Brandon Aiyuk as well. Now with Deebo Samuel potentially being available, the San Francisco Chronicle reported that they being the Steelers, actually reached out to the 49ers, seeing where they stood on Deebo. The asking price was too high, as it should be for Deebo Samuel, so the Steelers turned away from that. But even still, that interest is still there. There's too much movement around this whole situation for me to feel easy and completely feel like, nothing is going on here between the 49ers and their receivers. But also, after the conclusion of the second day of the draft, John Lynch really came out and clarified everything from their standpoint, saying that they didn't entertain any of that being the trade rumors and those reports on that day in the first round. And he also mentioned that they were more than happy with their wide receiver group, adding Ricky Pearsall to it. They're very excited about it. And I would probably tend to agree with him because you look at Ricky Pearsall, one of the more underrated guys in this draft, out of Florida, not really having the eye-popping numbers that some of these top three receivers had. You know, you look at Marvin, Rome, Malik Neighbors, all putting up, being in the top three, and really just gaining all this national attention from really the whole of college football, with Marvin Harrison at Ohio State. The longest of time was the number one receiver. He was pro ready. He's the son of Marvin Harrison Sr. So all of that, all kind of tied into it. Malik Neighbors as well, bursting onto the scene with Jaden Daniels, Rome Odunze, the kind of season that he had with Michael Penix, going to the national championship. Then you have Ricky Pearsall, who at Florida had a struggling year there with the Gators, but had a lot of good plays, showed a lot of good tape on film. And people around the league, a lot of teams, a lot of scouts, if you look on the internet or wherever you get your information, had pretty high grades on Ricky Pearsall. They were a lot higher on him than most people tuning into the draft would be if they weren't aware of him whatsoever. And me, seeing those, I went to check it out. He seems like a solid receiver, the kind of receiver that the 49ers would have success with. And I think he could definitely contribute to them right away. If you look at their wide receiver group, you have Deebo Samuel currently there on his contract, Brandon Aiyuk on his fifth-year deal. Juwan Jennings showed a lot of good moments last year in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl as well, being another underrated receiver for the 49ers. Now you add Ricky Pearsall. I think those four have the potential to be probably the most well-rounded, balanced, talented group of wide receivers in the NFC, definitely. And you can make an argument for the entire NFL because of what Deebo can do. Brandon Aiyuk breaking out this past year. Juwan Jennings, another good underrated receiver. And Ricky Pearsall, who a lot of people were high on. I think this has the potential to be one of the best groups, but because of the Brandon Aiyuk situation, Deebo Samuel now being involved in these trade rumors, and not to mention Juwan Jennings, I mentioned had a very good end of season last year. He has technically not signed his restricted free agent tender, so there is a little bit of doubt there on how that's going to be resolved. Aiyuk's on his fifth-year deal, needs a contract extension. Deebo is in the middle of his 3-year, $71 million extension he signed in 2022. But the end of that is not too far off in distance there. So, it's not like these receivers are signed for another 3-4 years right away. The 49ers have to start thinking about, especially with Aiyuk, how to resolve this so you can keep this group together, so you can have all four contribute. Because last year in the Super Bowl, you saw how offensively they had those duds to start the second half, and because of that, I truly believe that they weren't able to win that Super Bowl. To start that second half the way that they did, I think ultimately cost them in the end, and because they really didn't get anything going, they overused Christian McCaffrey a lot towards the end of last season, and you can see how much of a toll that took on him. Because Brock and the receivers might not have contributed as much as McCaffrey, he was dealing with a calf. He was in and out of the snaps, the plays, and he kind of struggled to continue that exceptional rhythm that he was on. Adding Ricky Pearsall now, another weapon, can create more of that balance between the passing game, plus Brock Purdy having another year of experience. It would all make this team even better, if that was even possible before then, to have another great year, another great offense, and really just help Brock Purdy develop with another weapon. But all that being said, with all of this smoke that's being created around really Brandon Aiyuk, I find it overall hard to believe that all four of these receivers start training camp, start the season, preseason, all on the 49ers. I just find it hard to believe. It's really difficult for me to be convinced by what John Lynch says, what Kyle Shanahan says, because I just believe that all general managers would say stuff like that. It's going great. The negotiations are in a good place. We have good dialogue. You've all heard it before with, for example, Justin Jefferson. It seemed all positive last offseason with how the Vikings were talking about it. Nothing gets done. Now you're still pretty much into May already, and no deal has been finalized with Justin Jefferson and how good he is. So that is really not convincing for me from the 49ers with Aiyuk really trying to figure out his situation. Now you have Deebo involved in it. People are going to continue to ask him about it. It's something to watch out for. And I just believe that one of these guys is not going to end up on this team. Sure, they can keep three of them, probably Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, and Deebo. I think still Brandon Aiyuk. I know I predicted him to be moved during the draft. That didn't end up happening, but still, I think there's too much smoke here for nothing really to be happening. You've seen it in situations where there were talks. Stephon Diggs, one of the best examples. There was talks and talks and talks about the Bills and him not really being satisfied with it, having some trouble, some problems within the locker room, him and Josh Allen, how's their relationship, and then ultimately he gets traded. There was always that smoke there, and it ended up being something. He gets moved on, and that's that. The same thing goes in other situations as well. It's not the first time this has happened, and I just think if they haven't signed a deal yet and it continues on this path through mid-May, even June, I think there's no chance Aiyuk, maybe another receiver, stays on this team. But those trade talks have now really started to surface, now carrying over to Deebo Samuel. I don't buy it from the Deebo side of things, but with Brandon, I think it's just really not if, but when he gets moved, just so the 49ers can move on from this. It doesn't seem positive for them, and it's unfortunate because I would be very excited about this wide receiver group, but, unfortunately, just in my opinion, it doesn't seem like this all get worked out for the 49ers. It'll be interesting to see where he goes, but, that all depends on the time and how this all develops. Still very slow, but I expect it to happen at the end of the day. But in saying that, we'll leave it there. And in the meantime, we'll carry on with today's show. 2 more topics to talk about on today's episode. After the break, we're going to get into more of the Falcons' selection of Michael Penix, what their general manager said, and more on what I believe around the situation, how it all developed between Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix, as well as Zeke making his illustrious return to the Dallas Cowboys. I'll talk about the details of that and what I believe could it just mean for the Cowboys and Zeke going forward. So stick around, a lot more to talk about on today's episode. We'll be right back.